Hey guys, the Common Man here. So I have in front of me a decent little collection of multi-tools. You can see this primarily consists of Leatherman with one Victorinox here, the Spirit MX clip. So the reason I've got these all laid out is because these are all of the multi-tools I own right now, except I do have one Gerber. It's an old school Gerber Flick, one of their, I guess, early single-handed iterations of a multi-tool. It was kind of a unique tool. I don't think it was executed all that well. It had some issues. And right now, unfortunately, I've got that buried away in some stuff. I don't even know where it is. If I find it, I'd love to actually review it and see how relevant it is today. But anyway, that all being said, these are all of the multi-tools that I currently own, and they all actually do see some use. Some more than others, certainly. But one thing that I do not have here, apart from maybe this one here, is a more kind of budget-friendly multi-tool, and particularly a Leatherman. So obviously Leathermans, you can go all the way from those little Leathermans. I want to say, I don't remember the name of it, but one of them's got a little scissor, I think maybe instead of pliers. I know that you can get smaller ones. I know they used to have the Leatherman Juice. I don't think you can get that anymore. But now you're kind of looking at, on the lower end, you're kind of looking at versions like the Wingman or the Bond. But again, those are just tools that I didn't have on hand. So I really wanted to check out a more budget-oriented Leatherman. What I'm going to show you is probably a more affordable version of a Leatherman, but not really the one I was going after, I'll be honest with you. But what we have here is the Leatherman Rebar. And I know, again, affordable, not really. I think I paid 80 bucks for this guy here. To be honest with you, in full disclosure, I was really wanting to get a Leatherman Bond. The store that I was at, though, or the couple of stores that I went to, did not have one in stock. And then after kind of playing around with this guy, I decided this is probably not a bad representation of a more traditional Leatherman design. Of course, this guy features, it's got a few different features from the Leatherman Bond that definitely set it apart and make it a little bit more useful in my collection. But anyway, again, this is going to be the Leatherman Rebar. I also went for just the regular stainless version instead of the coated version, really just for price. And I don't know, I thought the stainless actually looked pretty good, which is against my norm. Usually I like the coated multi-tools, as you can see here. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. So this is definitely, like I said, a much more traditional Leatherman design. It's got a lot of characteristics that kind of remind you of the original Leatherman PST, kind of the very first Leatherman multi-tool, in that it's kind of this clamshell design. All of the tools are only accessible from the inside of the handle, meaning that when the pliers are closed, you have no access to any tools here. That, of course, can be seen as a downside, or you can actually look at it as a positive in the fact that these tools are kind of well protected, and if you do throw this in a pocket, nothing's going to come open on you. And I do want to mention that retention on this is actually quite good. That's one issue that I sometimes have with multi-tools, is that when they're in the closed position, they kind of want to either walk open like the goat. That was a little bit of a pain. And you'll notice I don't have that anymore. I moved that along because that tool just didn't it just had too many issues for me to really care for it. But anyway, this stays closed really nice, and probably the big reason is because it does not have a like a spring in it to force the handles open. But we'll go ahead and get this guy opened up. Just a very basic opening method, two-hand, and it does have a nice lock into position. It's just got some tension. Not 100% sure. I guess it just works on some spring tension of some type with these little ramps in here where you can kind of break it free to unlock it, and to lock it, it just kind of snaps into position. And it does actually snap quite firmly. The first thing that I noticed when I opened this guy up is it was quite stiff, which is actually pretty typical for any Leathermans I've ever bought. They do tend to come fairly stiff, and then they do free up over time. But I will say I have yet to have a Leatherman that develops any serious amount of play. Unfortunately, my Victorinox, I'm very sad to say that it is developing a fair amount of plier jaw play, where you can kind of wiggle the handle side to side. But again, for Leatherman, I just haven't had that issue. So let's go ahead and talk about the differences between this and the Leatherman Bond. The main differences are going to be the fact that all of the interior tools actually lock into position, and this is the disengagement on both handles here. This also has replaceable cutter heads, so those are two, I would say, objectively better features as you know, as far as what this offers over the Leatherman Bond, unless of course you live in like the UK or somewhere that does not allow for a locking blade. But one feature that this does not have that the Bond did have, which was actually kind of an awesome thing in my eyes was holes for a pocket clip. So unfortunately right now you cannot put a pocket clip on this particular tool on the rebar because it does not have holes. I know there's alternative methods out there. You can have those stick on, like the Night Eyes or Nighties, whatever, stick on type pocket clip. You could probably rig some sort of a carabiner kind of pocket clip. But unfortunately, the way it comes from the factory, no real quick way to put one on here. So kind of a bummer. But for a tool in my collection, I don't collect just to review things because I'm working on a limited budget, of course. I buy all these tools myself, so they have to serve a purpose for me. And for me, a locking set of tools is much, it's a lot more confidence inspiring than non-locking. I don't like just the detent style locking method of the Bond. And then also the replaceable cutter heads is a nice thing for me. I like to be able to put in a new pair of cutter heads if I need to, rather than have to send the tool back to Leatherman for warranty work, which I know that they do pretty well. But again, I just don't want to have to send my tool in to just replace some cutter heads. So those are really the two main reasons that I went, or I guess three main reasons I went with this over the Bond. But I'm confident in saying a lot of the things you're going to see here, you're going to see pretty much mimicked in the Bond for about a $20 less tool. So that's definitely something to consider. This is a little bit more expensive. But while we've got this open, let's just go ahead and take a look at the features. Obviously, like I said, we've got replaceable cutter heads here. Same exact cutter heads you're going to see on the Surge, on the Wave, on the Arc. As far as I understand, it's the same exact cutters with the same materials. And I will say, I never had an issue with my cutter heads on the Arc breaking or anything, but I will say that they are starting to develop some wear. You can see some dents in them there. But again, no shattering, which is great. And I have absolutely beat on these cutter heads. You can see this tool is starting to show some signs of use finally, because I just abuse this thing. I don't know how it doesn't look worse than it does, but that shows you how well it holds up. Anyway, cutter heads have worked out quite well for me, so I'm excited to see how they work out here. And then down from that, and speaking of the cutter heads, you're going to have a hard wire cutter on that kind of that inner stepped area, soft wire cutter here, and then I believe that they'd call this a wire stripper down at the very base. You are going to have a wire crimper down here at the very bottom end of the plier heads, kind of in the opposite end of the pivot. And as far as the plier heads, you can see they line up very nicely, which has been very consistent with Leatherman as far as my experience goes. A nice fine tip there. You're going to be able to get some nice fine work done. You've got a good needle nose section, a good larger kind of bolt section there with some very nice knurling, so good grip. Moving back to the handle, a concern that I had with this style of a multi-tool is the comfort when using them. It definitely is not nearly as comfortable as, say, the Surge or the Wave Plus or even my Arc, because you do have these two sides of the handle that your hands are falling on. It doesn't necessarily dig into you so much. It just provides a couple of little pressure points down these two lines here, and it's definitely not nearly as comfortable to put a lot of force on. But to be honest with you, with these Leathermans, you're probably only going to be using them with so much force, and in those rare occasions that you're going to have to apply a ton of force, it's not like it's going to actually hurt you. It's just not as comfortable. Definitely something to consider, though. And then let's go ahead and go over the internal tools. Like I said, all of the internal tools here you're going to see do lock, so I'm not going to demonstrate the locking position on all of them, but I do want to reiterate the pliers have to be in the open position to access any of these tools. So let's go ahead and we'll start on this side. First off, you've got a pretty decent saw blade here. Let's check. Oops, try not to hit the camera while we're at it. As far as the kerf goes, it doesn't seem, it's very hard to tell. Yeah, it looks like those teeth do fan out just a little bit wider than the actual, I guess, shank of the saw here. So you're going to be able to make a wider cutting path for this main body of the saw to pass through, if that makes any sense. The teeth just kind of flare out just a little bit, which is what you want, but it feels very slight. I'm excited to see how that works out. We've got a Phillips screwdriver, which I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think I actually like this better. I haven't used it yet, so I'm excited to see how it works in screws, but this design, just the basic form of this design, I think I might like better than the exchangeable bit, such as in the Arc here, as well as in the Wave Plus and the Surge. It's got this exchange a bit thing. The problem with this is if you are reaching down into a hole, you've got this bulk that is probably not going to fit down in a hole. And then also we're not using a 3D bit. This is like a 2.5D bit. So it's not going to have quite the biting strength of a full 3D bit such as this one. Again, I have yet to see. It looks like most people have good luck with it, but I'll update you if this doesn't work out. But again, this will fit down inside of a slot if a Phillips head screw is buried into it, which is often the case for like kids' toys and other things like that when you're using a multi-tool to fix something. It's also got a pretty good can opener. I've used this style can opener on other Leathermans. It does work out quite well. We are going to have a serrated blade here. This will be excellent for kind of harder materials, if you need to cut through a little bit of plastic, or if you need to cut through like a heavy rope, something. This serrated blade does work out pretty well. On the other side, let's go ahead and talk about the file. This is a very aggressive file. It does have a cross-cut section here, a single cut, and then it does have kind of like a metal blade on this end. I've used it and it works okay. It'll work in a pinch if you need to just saw through like a soft nail or something. Next, we have a group of smaller tools. We've got a larger flathead / pry bar, and in my Wave, I believe it has the same size here. This actually works pretty decent as a light-duty pry bar. Got a smaller flathead here, and then a nice awl or reamer that is plenty sharp to open up a package if you need it to. And then, of course, my favorite feature of any multi-tool would be the knife blade. The reason I say that is because if I'm carrying a multi-tool, a lot of the times it's going to have to take the place of a knife, because I don't like carrying both a multi-tool and a knife. And I should say it's my favorite feature besides the pliers, because that would be my #1 feature of a multi-tool. But a decent knife blade here. It's going to be 420 HC, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Same material as pretty much all other Leathermans, unless they, of course, are carrying a higher end material like the Magna Cut here, or oh boy, what is it, like the Charge or the Charge TTI. They have, oh boy, I'm blanking on the material. I know some came with like S35 VN. Anyway, they do come with some upgraded materials, but this is just the standard 420 HC on the Leatherman, and it does work out decently well. You will be stropping it, sharpening it here and there, but it gets the job done, and it's not so hard that it's going to end up chipping on you. These tend to roll before they chip, in my experience. And of course, the downside here is that it is an interior opening tool, so that you are not going to be able to cut down on a flat surface. You're just going to have the very belly you'll be able to use on a flat surface, because the tool or the blade is raised up fairly high on the handle here. And then another thing is, obviously the ease of opening. It's going to take 2 hands to open it, and it's going to take 2 hands to close it. And be very careful when you're closing it, because it'd be easy to get your finger in there. And my dog is growling at something. I don't know what. I think everything's okay. Anyway, that is pretty much that. This is, again, the Leatherman Rebar, a pretty cool kind of traditional Leatherman style that, I just haven't really experienced in the past yet. And I'm excited to put it to the test. I'm not sure what my dog's issue is. Hold on one second. As I suspected, there is nothing wrong outside. My dog just gets a little grumpy sometimes. Anyway, definitely expect some more videos on this guy. I would love to do some side-by-side comparisons between this and other multi-tools, whether it be a Leatherman or a Victorinox, or maybe even a Gerber in the future. Although I'll be honest, Gerber doesn't always impress me with a lot of the things that they release, so I'm always hesitant, or I've always been hesitant to pick up any of their multi-tools, but I know I should probably give it another try. So hopefully in the future I will pick up something like a center drive or something like that. I would like to experience it. But anyway, like I said, stay tuned for more videos on this guy. I'm excited to put it to the test. Thanks for watching, though. If you want to see more of my knife or EDC content, definitely consider subscribing. I've got a lot more coming. I'm very excited to get a hold of some new products and test them out and let you guys know what I think. So hopefully I can help you guys narrow down what it is you would like to carry. So anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye.